Joining me today in the virtual Catalyst studio in the sky is the C.O.O. of Visit St. Pete Clearwater, Tim Ramsberger. Welcome, sir.
Hey, Joe. Good afternoon. Thanks for having me.
So one of the things that when people think about Visit St. Pete Clearwater, a big element of what they do that maybe doesn't get talked about a lot is that you're responsible for bringing down a lot of sporting events. There's a big attraction for tournaments and amateur sports and all sorts of sports to come to the area, and obviously those have been affected negatively to a large degree by the pandemic. So I thought we could catch up on what the state of sports was when it comes to tourism and those types of events.
Yeah, and again, for background, for maybe those who are hearing this maybe for the first time, that as an extension of Visit St. Pete Clearwater, we're obviously under the umbrella of Pinellas County government. That is not uncommon in the sports commission world. A lot of sports commissions are private. You know, our friends over across the bay in Tampa Bay Sports Commission. You know, it's a separate entity that gets funded through bed tax. We are obviously housed within the government here, but there's advantages to that, some disadvantages. But overall, it's a situation we find ourselves trying to promote sporting events, amateur sports programming that not only brings direct economic impact for that particular event on that particular weekend, but it's also an opportunity for us to convert those who attend from out of our region to come back in another time that maybe is not related to sports events, come back as a leisure traveler. So there's a bigger play here beyond just simply programming amateur sports events. There's a longer vision with just getting people here in the destination one time and then have them come back as a repeat customer. So the Sports Commission, we rebranded a couple of years ago. We're now St. Pete Clearwater Sports and Events, because we do encompass more than just sports programming. We do work on several coordination of events with several third-party organizers. And of course, we run a funding program called the Elite Event Funding Program that sponsors things like the Valspar, Sugar Sands up in Clearwater, Localtopia, about 20 plus events throughout the year throughout Pinellas County. We've been impacted like everybody else. We've between mid-March and June have lost over 26 events, have canceled or have postponed to a future date, which is again uncertain. Those 26 events would have brought 40,000 visitors, approximately 20,000 room nights. The economic impact that we've lost is about $10 million. The good news is we're starting to see programming coming back. We're starting to see events. Of late, we've had 5 events recently, and we're talking about amateur sports programming that's about the participants and their affiliated travelers, like their families and friends that come with them. This is not large spectator-driven events. Obviously, those are on pause, but we've had a good return in our softball venues, especially up in Clearwater. And so we've just recently had about 10,000 visitors in the marketplace. Again, $3 million economic impact that we're judging from that. There's pent-up demand, and I've held a couple of webinars where we've had panelists from around the country have talked about the fact that people want to get back to amateur sports programming. The kids want to play, the parents want them to be playing. The question is now, is it safe? And we have taken great strides at St. Pete Clearwater Sports and Events to partner with not only our municipal facilities, but our privately run and operated facilities around Pinellas County. We've also reached out to other sports commissions in the region, from Sarasota, Bradenton, Tampa to Pasco. We're on calls on a regular basis to just check best practices, not only from the standpoint of what's happening in the marketplace, but what are we doing to make sure that we're doing the right things? What is the correct standards to be operating under? So we are helping in that communication space with organizations and facilities with developing operating guidelines, let's call them, to help get through this period in which you need to protect yourself. And so public safety obviously is number one concern. I think moving forward, it's a question of adaptation, alignment, and innovation. And we continue to have an eye towards what is sports programming going to be like once we reemerge from this. So yeah, a lot going on with us behind the scenes. We've, as an overall organization, paused our mass media, if you want to call it that, our traditional advertisement. Now's not the time to be doing it when people are expressing, as a general consumer sentiment, that they're not interested in traveling, and they certainly don't want to hear about travel opportunities right now. We are still engaging in digital formats and platforms where consumers have reached out and said they are interested in finding information because they do have an intent to come here. So we're doing our best as an overall organization, and in particular in the sports space, to make sure that we're leading the discussion here, to make sure that we're doing all the right things, not only to be safe, but to communicate that to not only the consumers, but our business-to-business conversations out there with event organizers.
So digging a little more into the sort of permanent effects or the new, the lessons learned from the pandemic. A lot of people that I've talked to in the event space are saying that the hybrid event that'll be part virtual, part in person, is here to stay. Sports a little bit tricky, right? Events without fans. Moving to, there's still a lot of value in producing the digital product, the TV, with professional sports and whatnot. So what's sort of emerging as some of the trends that you think will last for years to come?
Yeah, and I think, to highlight what you just said, Joe, that, the economic models, aren't the same across the board. There's only so many NFLs, NBAs, Major League Baseball, MLS, who can adjust to make sure that those television revenues are there, the broadcast rights and those fees. It quickly drops off from there. And before I directly answer your question, I just want to highlight another phenomena that's taking place here that's affecting not only the amateur sports at a young age, but obviously with college football in question. It's the lifeblood. Let's face it and be honest that, these school programs, these sports programs for a number of schools throughout the country, probably all of them, are driven by the revenue that they get from the football program. And so we're already seeing contraction. We're already seeing schools drop programs. We're seeing conferences shut down. And when you go beyond the traditional, football, basketball, there are a lot of sports that get funded, like fencing and wrestling and gymnastics, that are Olympic sports. And so couple that phenomena at the collegiate, in the collegiate space, with what's happened with the shutdown of the Olympic Games this summer, and the fact that Tokyo 2021 still may not happen, is you have all that revenue that these national governing bodies of sport, they rely on that funding that cycle every 4 years. Well, that's now shut down. And so you don't have, you have a situation where these national governing bodies, these NGBs, are struggling to survive. We've already had one situation where the USA Wrestling's filed bankruptcy. So couple that with the idea that, you've got athletes at the collegiate level that may have Olympic aspirations, and they can't, get, their national governing body is hurting, and then the college program. So where do these people go? Where do these athletes go? So you've got that phenomena, but then obviously, you go beyond that at the professional level, is what you had brought up, that, that type of sports programming, they've got obviously wherewithal to figure out revenue streams much more viable than you do, again, when you're a national governing body for sport. So I do think this notion of consolidation is what's going to be key. I think what you might see, and I mean that in terms of sports organizers, but I also think you're going to see that with events. So I think you might see more events that have a hybrid component to it. Whether it be, concerts with an air show or vice versa. Music tends to be a core element as far as ancillary entertainment for a lot of events. But I think you might see a trend where you're going to have to build your financial model around maybe a couple of core or 2 or 3 core elements to it, not just somebody else may come because they've got ancillary entertainment. I think the one thing that you might end up seeing too is more regionalism with events. I mean, I think we're starting to see that in the state of Florida, that travel teams and organizers who may used to try to attract from the entire Southeast United States may again, I think it's a matter of alignment, adaptation, and that innovation. So we've got an eye towards that. I wish I had a crystal ball. I mean, but yeah, it's going to take, I think, it's going to take continued focus on what is going to be innovative. And I think that goes to your question, is if you can be innovative in that space. Yeah.
Because I mean, the hard truth behind all of that is that it is true contraction. It's simply, there were a lot of, just like in the in the restaurant space, there were so many restaurants that were sort of just hanging on and getting by and they had those jobs and had that revenue but weren't super profitable. And then with the break in revenue, they've gone out of business, and the numbers go anywhere from 15 to 35% of restaurants, and eventually those will get replaced, and we'll come back to a stasis with new and innovative restaurants or whatnot. But the reality is, it's just for the short term, and I say for a few years they're just gone. And that sort of seems to be true with the contraction in the sports and the events and whatnot, that a lot of sort of those peripheral types of events that were sort of, decent and break even and maybe just had a legacy and kept going, they may just be kind of gone until they're replaced by something new, which may take a number of years. Is that fair?
Yes, absolutely. Clearly, this is not just disruption. This is a game changer completely across the board of how you think about everything at all levels. And I think that's the point I was trying to get across, that, there's an impact when a certain Olympic sport maybe now goes into bankruptcy, and that trickles down at the collegiate level, and it may trickle down to somebody right now, a kid who's in high school that says, hey, I really want to compete in gymnastics. If they really, aspire for the Olympic Games and things like that, what are those financial opportunities are going to be around to help support a kid like that go through that training? Because that's what it's going to take. So, yeah, I think you're spot on that the long-term impacts still haven't been felt, and obviously nobody really has a clear understanding on how to deal with it just yet.
All right. And you get the feeling, I mean, there are people, obviously even places like Nike or, who historically have, because the mechanism has been there with the events and they could just sponsor them, it'd be interesting to see if they actually come up with, a lot of these companies that have benefit, that if it becomes, if the economics are such that they can't get enough opportunities just to plug into, that they may start creating their own and innovating in that way too. And certainly it also shakes up the playing field for alternate sports and other sports that maybe are more virtual, or maybe an evolution in the types of things that people are spending their time on, because of availability.
Yeah, and again, we're hopeful, like everybody else. I am. We're going to get past this at some point. Just hope there's not too much damage that can't be undone. But I do think this adaptation that needs to happen going forward, we're trying to be on the front end or the front edge of that conversation now, so we can truly understand what that means. But I think the conversations obviously are widespread. What are we doing with our school programs, for example? So, I'm hopeful that the learnings long term, God bless everybody for getting through this, but I think long term, I think hopefully we'll be better off in the long run to withstand events like this that have total disruption. So yeah, that's one of the goals that we've had in terms of thinking through all of this, is what are we doing to mitigate now? What are we going to do to recover on the short term? But long term, really, what does this mean? And again, I use the term opportunity. I do think this is going to be an opportunity for us to be smart about the future, for the sake of, amateur sports, because it's key. We all grew up playing sports, and I just think it's such a fabric of our community. As somebody once wrote that, sports is your community's cultural currency. And among other things, whether it be arts and culture and all that, I truly believe that. And I want to see Pinellas County continue to be a place that not only takes care of its own, kids in terms of programs, but we're an opportunity for people to travel to and have a great time and enjoy their sports experience.
Well, we'll keep watching this closely. Appreciate your time, and we'll look to check back in a short while and keep close to this. And In the meantime, thanks for the good work that you're doing and keep fighting the good fight.
Thank you, Joe. It's good to talk to you and stay healthy.